Meeting of the Parkersville Redevelopment Commission at 7:31. We will have roll call from my right, please.
Robin Bowman.
Eric Prime.
CJ Frankfort.
Mark Beadle. We have a quorum, so we will continue with today's business. Would everybody please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the June 10, 2021 meeting. Has everybody the opportunity to review those? Any additions, edits, or corrections? I will then accept a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 10th.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A motion by Mr. Francoeur, second by Ms. Bowman. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes are approved. New business. We've got some RDC tools to discuss, and we have a guest. Heidi, are you ready to roll?
Sure.
Fantastic.
If you want a hard copy. Somewhere.
It's getting pulled up on the
Okay.
screens, and then you should be good to go at the podium with the,
Okay. No. It's a large screen. I have it on my computer too if I need to pull it up.
there we go. Oh, there's.
Okay.
Got it.
I can just use this.
You should be done.
Oh, yeah.
Slide over here.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, Heidi Amswath, Baker Tilly. So I wasn't really planning to go through every slide in the presentation that I've provided you, but definitely wanted you to have information as a resource as you guys kind of work through, what projects you are looking to do next. I know when I was here last, there was discussion about maybe amending the TIF areas or adding some new TIF areas in certain locations. And so wanted to hit on some of the tools and some slides in here that reference what that process looks like. And so I want this to be more of a discussion. Julie kind of told me that a couple of things you guys have been talking about, just as far as, potentially how do you finance construction of projects? You had talked about an abatement, I believe, at the last meeting. I was not here. And then the meeting that I was at a couple of months ago about amending the TIF area. So there is, again, way more in this PowerPoint than what all of that information entails. But I definitely, again, want this to be conversational. I'm going to hit kind of on some main points just so you know in this document what it all entails. But Julie, if you have things, please, and Susie, stop me and ask questions. So I definitely want this to be open conversation. So I'm going to start with kind of basic. You all as a redevelopment commission are responsible for the redevelopment district, which is coterminous with the town's boundaries. But with that kind of special district of government that you have the opportunity to issue bonds payable from a property tax if it's a project that you feel that you want to do. And so I think it's just important for you all to just have that general basic understanding of a redevelopment district. And that very last point is the special benefits tax, or that property tax that you can levy on the redevelopment district or the taxpayers within the town to do projects if it's something you want to do. Again, that's in special cases, and each project is very different, I would say, as far as what we would suggest you use as far as financial tools. But if it is a project you want to do, if you don't have the funds to do it, and you really wanted to levy a property tax, then you could do such a thing. So I just wanted to point that out. The next slide is just some powers that you all have as a redevelopment commission. I would say as far as the discussion around construction finance and actually getting projects going, acquisition of property is a big piece. A lot of communities use the redevelopment commission to buy and sell land because the process is a little slimmed down from what it requires the town to do. So that would be one thing on here. Obviously, the issuance of bonds, loans, grants, we'll get into that here in a little bit, but just a few things. And then kind of the middle point is to repair, maintain, and build the structures, do the redevelopment in the town. Oops. Okay, I think it might have skipped a couple of slides, but we can jump here. So in your packet, there are a couple of slides on page 3, just about TIF, what TIF is. We talked about it before. I can talk about it again if it's something that's still maybe a little bit fuzzy in understanding. You flip to page 4 of your packet. The purpose of TIF, which is the top slide number 7. I'm not quite sure why the PDF didn't pick up all of these, but
I have one quick question.
yes, please.
On the 25-year span, does that start from when you set up the TIF or from the time you issue the first bond on the
The
TIF?
time you issue the first bond.
Okay, so.
And I do have a
technically
slide in here.
speaking, we have not done that, so our clock hasn't started on any of these, right?
So that law was put into place for any TIF area created after 2015.
Okay.
But you have 2 of your original areas were created before that.
Okay.
So 2 of your original areas for the State Road 135 Whiteland Road TIF area that has started.
Okay.
And then your industrial park TIF has also started.
Okay.
And they both end in 2037. For TIF areas, and there is a slide on here, but TIF areas created in 2008 had a 30-year life.
Okay. You said the 135 area, and what was the other one?
The industrial park,
So the one down here, 69 is,
that one has not started yet. The 37 TIF area has not started yet.
thank you.
So TIF is obviously one of many tools. I'm just going to hop to the slide that's on here. TIF is one of many tools that local governments have to utilize, though it's the most flexible and easy to use incentive. So here is a list of the various local incentives. The slide. You can skip forward and see where. I don't know how that page got flipped in there. One second. Sorry, it's a PDF, so let me catch up here. So this slide that's up on the screen is on page 4 of your document. It's slide number 7. Sorry about the confusion. So the reason why you utilize TIF as one of those tools is to incentivize companies or businesses, developers to locate here and build projects here, and to make sure that it is orderly growth, meaning that you have a plan. There is dedicated places within your community that you are focusing on growing and bringing businesses into the community. So here are just some pictures of projects that have been done in other communities, which there's a slide that talks through, but parking garages, streetscape, lamps, signage, any of that type of work can be funded through the TIF. Economic development, I would say, are kind of the typical projects people think about with TIF, but I would say otherwise, because there's a lot of redevelopment projects that are done with TIF, but obviously office parks and your kind of big industrial guys. But yeah, infrastructure such as roundabouts, again, parking garages, some communities use it for fire stations and other needs. If again, TIF is one of the only tools that communities have to work with. If some communities aren't flush with income taxes or want to issue property taxes. I'm not sure if I need to get into how TIF works. This is a pretty basic graph. There's a base AV that's set, which is the lime green area. All of the overlapping taxing units continue to get that AV, so the schools, libraries, county, township. And then the gray area is the incremental AV. That's what you all capture. Take that AV, that's a tax rate divided by 100, and that's the revenues that you get to be able to use to leverage on projects or do projects within the TIF area. Then once the TIF life ends, then all of that assessed value goes to all of the overlapping taxing units. Here's a slide of who those overlapping taxing units are. So as far as how you can use the TIF, and I guess is probably one of the points of why I'm here today, is to talk about, again, how TIF can be used. It can be used to fund sewer and water lines, road, rail spurs, land acquisition. It's very, very flexible in its use. So say come up with the projects you want to do, and more than likely the TIF could fund it. It just depends on, what your TIF areas alone could support. As far as how TIF can be used, it can be used as a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning if you have a one-time project that you want to fund, you can fund that with the cash you have in your balance right now in your account. Or you can leverage that TIF revenue stream over a certain period of time to a bond issue. Kind of like a mortgage. It can be up to 25-year bond legally, but really would go the life of the TIF area that is outstanding. So on those pieces of your TIF area that don't have a maturity date yet, then those could go 25 years, and the life would start at closing of those bonds.
Remind me, can we use TIF dollars from, say, the industrial park TIF and use it like on 135 TIF?
So your TIF areas are consolidated.
Okay.
So that allows you to do that.
Okay.
Your EDAs are consolidated.
But it can only be within the TIF area.
In serving or benefiting the TIF area. So if you have a sewer line, and this is where it gets legal, it's 2 miles down the road, not in the TIF area, but it serves a part of the TIF area, it connects into the TIF area, then normally council can get comfortable with it being used for that, or a road, trail project, whatever it may be. Yep. Here's just another more detailed slide as far as the permitted uses of TIF, with that in directly serving or benefiting language at the top. Any capital project expenditures, the public infrastructure, as we talked about, recreation facilities, we've seen it used for public safety projects. We've seen some communities that are a little bit more flush with TIF using it for job training. Really, you can be pretty creative with the use of the TIF area or the TIF revenues, but again, it has to be in serving or benefiting the TIF. I don't know if you recall the discussion we had last time, and I don't think I have a slide in here about it, is there are 2 legal boundaries that get set up when you create a TIF area. The EDA boundaries is where you can spend the money, and the allocation area is where you capture the incremental assessed value, and they don't have to be the same boundaries. So if you have an EDA that's a little bit bigger than your allocation area because you want to spend money here downtown, but you want to capture TIF from a different location, and that allows you to do that, which is similar to what you guys did when the consolidation.
So once you set that EDA, it doesn't change.
You can,
It remains in effect going forward, and if you want to do different projects within that EDA, as long as it's serving, it can be justified that it's serving the purpose within the actual TIF district.
correct. Yeah. And the EDA boundaries can change. You guys can amend those whenever you would want. So if there was another, parcel or section of property that you wanted to spend funds on, then you can amend that. Here are some just downtown uses of TIF. Similar list, I would say. Parking garages is one thing that we see often financed utilizing TIF. really any public infrastructure can be financed with TIF. This slide are the procedures for establishing a new TIF area, amending a new TIF area. It's really a 4-step meeting process, even though there are more than 4 steps listed here. But you obviously, step 1 would be to establish a redevelopment commission, which you have, and then preparing the economic development or redevelopment plan. Because with every TIF area, there's a plan, and you have to have all of the projects you want to fund in that plan for that TIF area. Then the first meeting is the RDC adopts a declaratory resolution. That's the first meeting. It starts with you all. Then it goes to Plan Commission. Then it goes to Council. And then it would come back to the RDC for a public hearing, and it's step number 6 there. And that is the last meeting where you adopt a confirmatory resolution, and then the TIF area is in place.
When counties set up a TIF district, and then cities or towns annex the area that is a part or is that TIF district, what happens then?
The county will have jurisdiction over that area if they have debt outstanding until the TIF area or the debt matures. So what happens is that the town, for example, would get the corporate portion of the tax rate, the taxes from that. But the redevelopment commission gets the TIF that would be generated from all of the non-corporate, like not the town rate. They would get all of the other pieces of the rate, all of the TIF generated from that portion of the rate. So basically, whatever the rate was before the town annexed it, the county will still get the TIF from those funds, and then the town would get the corporate portion of the rate as tax dollars, not as a piece of the TIF.
But then that TIF stays as a part of the county. That would be somewhat of an exception to the coterminous language you used in the very beginning, because technically the town or the city is, that they're not able to actually set up, and you can't have overlapping TIF districts.
You cannot, no. And they actually put a law into place this year that cleaned that up to make sure that communities weren't doing that.
Yeah.
Because there were a couple communities where, like, if you annex them, then they would come in and capture the corporate portion of the rate, the town's portion of the rate, as a TIF area, and it's called a pancake TIF, and it is an administrative nightmare.
Yeah.
So they got rid of those this year. But so I would say, if you were going to issue a bond, I mean, that annexed area is still part of your redevelopment district. So the taxpayer is still within that area. You would levy on. You just wouldn't. They would not be in your TIF area and under your jurisdiction.
If that TIF area that you were overlapping, that was a part of the counties, are you allowed to spend dollars if it's connected to the rest of the TIF district? Is the town or the city allowed to spend TIF dollars in that area if it's an overlapping TIF district?
The county,
If it's
Yes.
the counties that you've annexed?
the county could utilize their TIF revenues in serving or benefiting that area still.
Can the town or the city, I don't know why they would, but can the town or the city use their other TIF dollars? It can be a part of an EDA. Can you overlap it to an EDA?
I don't know that. I don't believe that you as a town would be able to put that into a town EDA because it's already in a county EDA, in a county TIF area.
Going on with the I-69 corridor and what the county just did, I guess that's where my questions are coming from.
And what did they do?
County just created a TIF district on I-69 in that corridor.
At 37.
Yeah, just north, I mean, in the area that's
Yeah.
still in the county, not over.
In the unincorporated part of the county. But it's a attractive corridor. So,
Yes,
So basically from county line down to the Bartersville town line.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, honestly, why we do suggest the cities and towns be very aggressive as far as thinking through potential development opportunities and annexation if you can because of that. Because counties will come in that are looking at those things and do just that.
Let me ask real quickly, you said something about if there's debt on that area, but what if there's?
Pretty sure that And we could check it.
I would have to look into it.
I'm pretty sure that the law is that, I'm not a lawyer, a disclaimer, but from my experience in a couple of other communities, that the county unit would have to utilize that TIF towards a debt payment to be able to keep it within their jurisdiction. And that it gets, we just need to check the law just to make sure that we cover ourselves. But I'm pretty sure if there is not a bond issue that would be issued immediately, I think there would be potentially an opportunity where the town could come in and annex it, and then you could potentially make it as your TIF area.
Almost like Robin asked, then actually start until that bond.
Correct. And that's why I do know I have another county client where some of the city is annexed into their TIF area. And I know that if they would get rid of the bond issue that they have outstanding, that council has told them that the city could come in and then take that underneath their jurisdiction. So I'm pretty sure that's how it would work. So I don't know if you know or have heard if the county is planning to issue bonds or not related to it, or if normally the TIF area has to be set up for a purpose.
What I read, at least in what was a part of our packet, it sounds like that's still a question.
Yeah, they haven't announced a specific plan to issue a bond.
Anyway,
That's a great question.
So it's probably worth confirming
Yes.
that nuance of whether or not any debt has been incurred.
But obviously, it's irrelevant to any town or city if it's outside their town or city limits.
Correct. And that's the thing. I mean, the town would have to be willing to go in and annex that property and get it, under their wing.
We can't go ask people to annex into Barkersville. They have to come to us. Is that correct?
I think so. They can ask me.
Voluntary annexation.
You can ask, but it has to be voluntary by the landowner now. Municipalities used to have the ability to do involuntary annexations, and that's pretty much been done away with.
So when they came around on the previous big annexation, and they came around, maybe it was a town council or somebody and said, hey, will you like to sign this agreeing to be a part of the annexation? That's kind of the voluntary part that qualifies as the, and I can say, anybody can say no, and then we're just not on the list.
Right. Okay. But it's typically now the landowner that is the petitioner for annexation.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
so we can't, so the town of Barkersville can't go out and hit a landowner and say, hey, would you like to be annexed into the town of Barkersville? They would have to come, from what I understand is they would have to come to us and say, we would like to be annexed. Right.
Who's defined as a part of Barkersville? Is a redevelopment commission member or a planning commission member, which is a non-elected position?
That's a good question.
What's determined to be town?
You mean as far as asking if people are willing to annex?
Yeah, I mean.
It would be the council. I mean, that would be driven mainly by the council. The RDC,
Well, my point being is if the town of Barkersville can't ask, it has to be the landowner. If there is a landowner, it's a part of the area that is maybe wanting to be annexed, but they happen to be on some of the commissions, are they disqualified from going around and asking if they want to join a petition? If they're a landowner within,
I wouldn't think so.
I guess if they're a landowner within, you couldn't be a part of those. Never mind.
We have an annexation go-to guy in our office, so I can ask
Sorry.
him these questions.
I still think that ask is okay. It's just.
I would
You can't do it involuntarily or against that landowner's
Oh, okay.
wishes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think solicitation is okay. I don't think there's any issue
Oh, okay.
there. It's just, they have to at some point agree in writing by petition to be annexed.
It's slowly chipping away at, it seems, how easy it is or hard it is to get it done. But
We have such a
Not aware of
small
the
sliver of
nuances.
that I-69 corridor when I'm looking at town. Anyway, that's where my mind's going as far as that corridor, but I digress. Sorry.
But I mean, this is the discussion though that needs to be driven out of this board in my mind is what do we want to do out there? I mean, what do you guys, as a town and as a redevelopment commission want to do out there? Because there is room for huge potential.
Yeah.
And so, what are the goals of the town? And then you guys kind of the driver behind it saying, this is, what we want to be out there as a town. So that's where, the council and you guys need to be talking.
Number one, is that by statute, and do we have a non-voting school member? We don't.
By statute, we have, probably not in 2021, but we have invited that opportunity and haven't had takers. I think, Mark, you reached out a year or two ago, and that wasn't the first time.
Right.
As far as a school board representative.
Correct.
Yeah, you should technically have one, a non-voting school representative that is the liaison between you all and the school corporation, so that when you guys are talking about amending the TIF areas and such, they have the understanding as far as why you're doing it, and the sell kind of the school. If the school, sometimes schools are up in arms about it. I know your guys have been okay, but
Should we, just as a matter of courtesy and CYA, send out an invite letter again, just indicating that?
That last meeting that we had, Dr. Gabriel was here. He's kind of, I don't know, he's kind of the CFO. He was there when I was on. So he really Dr. Long. Has always been somewhat involved with this down here. I'm not sure how to.
and if there's somebody in particular that you all know that might be willing, a personal ask might get somebody here quicker. However you want to handle it. Okay, the next slide is on the expiration date of the TIF areas, just so you have that as a reference. So you can see the third bullet point, those TIF areas created from July of 2008 to December of 2009. I guess that was a very small window. Your TIF areas were created before June 30th of 2008. So they both had, the two original areas had a 30-year life, but any ones created after 2010 have a 25-year life, but it does not start until bonds are closed. And then just some other bullet points, as we've talked about, that you can separate and reestablish TIF areas. If a TIF area is generating negative increment, that's something you might want to consider doing, which you guys do have one of your areas. The State Road 37 area right now is negative 729,000 of AV. So once you guys decide if you want to amend or change or do anything to that TIF area, then I would suggest probably reestablishing the base on it, the base value on it, so that you are starting from a 0 point instead of negative.
And who does that? Is that your area? Who establishes the base? Or is that?
So the base value is automatically set back to the prior January 1. In the state of Indiana, assessments are done on January 1. And so if you created it or amended a TIF area now or created a new TIF area today, it would go back to January 1, 2021. Pay 22 would be the base date of the TIF area. Then you'd capture going forward.
But if we expand or change an existing TIF area, does that then reset the whole area?
No, not typically, but you can do that as a part of the process. Let's see, what else?
That one's down 729.
729,000, yeah. Your other ones, your industrial park, the original area has a captured AV or that incremental assessed value of 2 million. So again, you take the 2 million times the tax rate divided by 100 to get the dollars. And then the industrial park expansion is negative 134,000. Your Whiteland State Road 135 TIF area is your healthiest. The original portion of that area is capturing 9.9 million. And then the expansion area is negative 15,000. So that one's not really a big deal. It's really your State Road 37 area will hurt any future growth the most.
Because you have to get back to zero.
Yeah. You have to come positive 720,000 or 730,000.
Losing those funds, it just means that that's
You're capturing zero.
Capturing zero of the amount that we're meant, that we start negative, until we get to that zero.
Right.
So you would have to have investment of more than 730,000 of AV before you get to zero. But right now it's zero.
Which out there is much, but still.
The next couple of slides are just on the reporting requirements. So I'm going to skip through these, but just wanted to make you aware of them. As a redevelopment commission, you're responsible for all of the various reporting requirements. And the next one that will be coming up is TIF neutralizations. And TIF neutralizations, we assist the county auditor's office with on your behalf. It's something all county auditor's offices are responsible for. It's that gray box. It's supposed to be done before August 1st, but we'll see if that actually happens. It's hardly ever met. But we are in contact with the county about that for you all. So I'm going to skip past this. This is just an example of an economic development plan that we suggest clients have. It normally goes out 5 years, but as soon as you guys get to a point where you're ready to lay out some projects that you're ready to do or seriously wanting to consider, then I suggest having a plan like this for each one of your allocation areas that shows revenues coming in and then kind of projections out as far as what the expenses would look like, or if it's a bond that you guys decide to issue, then taking those bond payments out just so you can see at the end kind of what you're working with for revenues. So I highly suggest a 5-year plan for each one of the TIF areas, especially as you are starting to accumulate TIF now, which is a good thing. That's just an example for you. Next couple of slides are just about some costs and benefits of TIF, some risks of TIF, which risks really come into play more on our end, watching those things for you as far as when you're ready to go issue bonds. But, in a TIF area, if an entity goes from tax exempt to a nonprofit, then all of a sudden you have that loss in revenue. So this slide is just kind of listing out some of those items. Company goes out of business, and obviously you wouldn't get TIF from that. So these are all things that we help manage for you. Make sure you don't get into any issues.
Are there situations where, like in an abatement request, where the RDC will require or ask the person making the abatement request to agree not to appeal? Is that ever part of the deal? To appeal?
I would say not in an abatement situation. We don't typically see that in an abatement situation. At least I don't. For abatements, you can do clawbacks, which mean if the company doesn't meet the investment level or the number of jobs, then you can actually claw back that abatement from them and you can end it. And that it's an annual process as far as the abatement goes, with checking that, make sure that they've qualified with what you've required.
Seems like I just thought I remembered hearing about situations where you had new development in the TIF, new assessed value came in, which would have been helpful to the municipality, to that tax district, or to the TIF, and then the taxpayer appeals the assessment and gets it lowered.
Yes.
Right, which is not good.
Correct. And that definitely is on the risks list of TIF.
Is there a way to mitigate
I would
that
say
if
that we see not to appeal agreements. You can do not to appeal agreements. We don't see them connected with abatements, but we see them connected with bond issuances, especially in the case where you're talking about incentivizing developers to locate here. So I'm going to hop forward to the funding side of things. On slide 26, or on page 13. So as far as why do entities borrow, that you can do short-term cash management needs, capital budgeting, and then obviously capital projects, which is what you all want to talk about. So one thing that is important for you to know as a body who has a jurisdiction, meaning the redevelopment district, is you do have a debt limit. it's a 2% debt limit, and you as a redevelopment district have a separate 2% debt limit from the town. So the town has its own, you all have your own separate 2% debt limit. I would say there are definitely ways to get around the debt limit, and some of the exceptions at the bottom are ways to get around the debt limit, meaning revenue bonds. So if you did pure TIF bonds, then that would get you around the debt limit. If you do a lease bond issue, then that gets you around the debt limit. I just want to introduce the concept so you can start to hear what that means. There are definitely ways, again, to get around it. But it's essentially the town's net assessed value divided by 3 times 2% is what your allowable amount of debt to be issued is. But again, in any kind of developer bond situation where the developer's coming in, building, you're just incentivizing them, that's not going to hit your debt limit. So again, I just kind of wanted to make you aware of this. It's something that council and ourselves would guide you through once you get to the discussions of issuing bonds. But it's just something you need to be aware of. State of Indiana, gotta love some of their archaic rules.
So that's not like a debt to income ratio of 100%
No.
of that 2%. That's the total amount of the debt for that TIF district. No,
It's
total
not even your
asset.
TIF district. It's you.
All-
It's the par amount of debt that you can issue within your
Within
redevelopment
the whole-
district. Yeah. So it's not necessarily even TIF district related. Yeah. But what's archaic about it is that it's connected to the net assessed value of the town, and it only allows you 2% of the net assessed value of the town when town's AVs grow 4% plus each year. And so for growing communities where you often see a high level of debt, this calculation does not keep up with the amount of debt that towns that are growing and spurring can need to issue. There's a lot of communities that are growing are issuing quite a bit of debt to be able to continue that growth, but and it ultimately is paying for itself. But so no, that doesn't even look at your revenue that's coming in or anything. It's just requirement. So this slide lays out various questions that we will need to start answering when you guys are ready to, or if you have a developer that's coming to you saying we want to develop in the town, or if you reach out to a developer and say, hey, we want you in the town. As far as the financing side of things go, these are just a list of the questions that we start working through as far as what the suggested financial tool is that we use to finance the project. So with any capital project, there are several different mechanisms for actually issuing bonds. And as I said earlier, each project is very project specific. So if it's a developer coming into your town to locate, my first suggestion to you would be to make them buy the bonds. That would be number one, because you want all of the risk on them. You don't want any of the risk on the town, and you want their project and their project's revenue to support the incentive you're giving them. That type of project looks different than, hey, we want to do some sidewalk improvements, downtown lighting, streetscape projects. That's like all purely public infrastructure. That bond issue would look very different than what the developer scenario would look like that I just explained. So each project is very different. These are, again, standard questions that we start with all types of projects. But my suggestion for you all would be to start with the list of projects that you want to get done, make a priority list of kind of where you want to be, what, like right out of the gates, what would be project number one that you would want to do. Start there and just work through the process. Work through the revenues you have available to you. We do what are called bonding capacities. So if you all know you have a project you want to do and it's $2 million, then we can run what is called a feasibility based on your TIF revenue stream that you have currently to show you how long the bond issue would need to be. We would put in various assumptions for like coverage and cost of issuance and all that kind of stuff to show you how you could get that $2 million project funded. So that I would say, as far as the process goes, is normally how we see clients move forward, is first starting again with the projects that you're interested in doing. If you could get some rough cost estimate of those projects that you want to do, then we would start to put together the financing and start kind of asking various questions as far as how you want to get it done. In the cases where the developers are coming to you saying, hey, we really like this property, or they've already, put a contract on a land property, for example, then we come in right away, work alongside with you guys to help kind of negotiate on the financial side of things what you as a town are willing to do. And so again, that discussion looks a little bit different than if it's just some sidewalks or roads or something that you want to fund. But knowing that you have the wherewithal to, one, incentivize developers to locate here, and to fund any kind of types of projects that were listed on some of those TIF slides or TIF uses slides, are all kind of within your wherewithal of doing.
So you mentioned something when you work on the developer side. So say we target a particular area or property or whatever it might be, we issue a bond, we acquire that property, and then we put out RFPs from the standpoint of developing that. And then the developers obviously react to the RFPs, and then they come in. You mentioned the first thing that you do, you have the developer take out the bond. They come in. Do they take over the bond payment? Is that what you're saying, or do or part of their debt financing for that project? They pay us back in the bond, and we pay off the bond, and we go do another project. Help me understand that.
Right. So as far as kind of step one would be the land acquisition side of things, some developers will just come in and buy the land and then come to you all as a public body to negotiate them. There's a financial gap. They want an incentive from you. So that's how we often see it work, where the developers are actually coming in and purchasing the property. You would have the wherewithal to, the second option would be to buy the property as a redevelopment commission and do the RFP process if you wanted to. Depending upon the purchase price of the land, I would say would depend on if you need to bond to buy that land or not. And in some cases, you could just use your cash to buy that land. So if you just used your TIF cash that you have on hand to buy that land, you could do that and then do RFPs out for it. And then to get developers to be interested in that property. And then at that point, probably in the RFP, you could put that you were going to provide some level of incentive to a developer that would be interested in locating there. I would say that
if you're on the bond side of it, and some level is less than what you've already committed to on the bond, you just work through that when that developer comes in. I mean, let's just say they only require 50% of what the bond payment is or what they're asking for support. You keep the bond, and then follow what I'm asking?
So basically they would tell you what like their financial gap is.
Okay.
And that is the number, the total incentive that they're requesting from you. Then we would run the numbers for you saying their project will get there and meet that gap, or it's short and it won't meet that gap. And you as a town would be like, this is what we can provide you. And sometimes it doesn't meet the full gap. And then the developer has to figure it out.
Or wonder if it's less than what the current bond is that we issued to buy the land. What do we do with that bond?
So I would say I don't often see bonds outstanding for land acquisition unless it's a really large like industrial project. If it's like a downtown piece of land, I would say normally communities can purchase that land with a cap, but ultimately, in your situation, if it was to happen today, what you would use is your existing TIF revenues from your other TIF areas to buy that land. And that bond issue, we need to shorten it as short as possible that your TIF revenues could support. But then when the company comes in to locate there, you create a new allocation area, and it's just the TIF from that project that would be provided back to them as an incentive. So your Land Act bond would be paid from your existing TIF areas, and the new bond issue would be paid from your project TIF from the new project, the new TIF area. So there could be two bonds outstanding at the same time. The developer bond's a little bit different. So in the state of Indiana, you all can't give TIF monies directly to a developer. You have to issue EDC bond, economic development revenue bonds is what they're called. And it's basically a formality of getting them their taxes back. It just is in a form of a bond payment. And so, again, in that situation, if a developer is coming in to develop, we would want to push them to buy their own bonds, basically say it's a longer tax abatement, essentially. You pay your taxes, we're going to get them back to you as a form of a bond payment for a certain period of time. And then there's no risk at all to the TIF. There's no risk to the existing TIF areas that you guys have. It's really all of the risk is on the developer to do their own project to then pay that financing, either to pay themselves back if they bought the bonds or to pay a bank back if a third party has to buy the bonds. Like you might have some more questions.
But we can't do any of those things without an economic development plan for that area, correct? That 5-year plan that you were talking about, does that have to be in place first?
The financial plan that I showed you? No, that does not have to be in place. That's just a tool I recommend you as a redevelopment commission have for yourselves.
So it's not a prereq for doing.
No, it is not. It is something where really in the project case where a developer is coming in to locate in the town, I call it a single developer TIF area. It's very situational based. I kind of leave those to the side because they are really contained within themselves. I think the ED plans, like the financial 5-year plan, is helpful in your existing TIF areas where you're not quite sure exactly what you want to do with those TIF revenues, but the revenues are coming in now. So you should probably start having a plan as far as how you want to spend those monies. And some of it could be earmarking $50,000 each year that just stays within the account to be used for future incentives. I mean, you don't have to spend on every dime, but so you could see like future incentives line item, professional fees line item, sidewalk, or I don't know, streetscape improvements or whatever, trail improvements. But no, it is not required, but just suggested. And it just helps everybody kind of get on the same page as far as what you want to do with the TIF areas. The next slide are just the various types of bonds. I just put this in here just so you can start to see some of the terms. I'm not going to get into them in details because I will overwhelm you. This next slide just states that you can issue bonds payable from just TIF. You can do TIF plus another revenue stream. If you wanted to do TIF plus income tax, you could. Again, each project is so situational based as far as what you're trying to fund and really what the goal of the project is. You can do TIF with property tax backup if, again, there's a major project within your TIF area that you all as a redevelopment commission want to do. Pure TIF bonds can sometimes be a little bit difficult to get sold in the market. So then you would want to add your property tax backup, even though you would not anticipate ever levying the property tax, to use as what we call a credit enhancement. And that would get you even better interest rates. And that really allows projects to get off the ground. So again, there are so many different ways we can get projects financed. And it's where I just suggest coming up with a list of projects or kind of goals that you guys want. This next slide is just a visual as far as how those EDC bonds work that I just talked about, for you to take a look at. I don't know if you want me to get into the details or not, but essentially you can pledge TIF towards bonds that developers buy. The next slide is TIF bonds with taxpayer payments. So similar to the not to appeal discussion that we had earlier, you can also, for developers, have minimum taxpayer payments, meaning that if their TIF were to come in less than what is estimated, then they have a minimum taxpayer payment that they have to make. And so it does typically makes bonds taxable in nature, which again, all of those kind of details we work through with you, but is just another way to incentivize and securitize project financings. So that is a very common thing. But in this particular situation, there are bonds issued by project TIF with a backup of the minimum taxpayer payments. And then they also put a property tax levy in this particular situation. So you can, again, kind of, we call them double barrel bonds, where you have multiple securities revenue streams backing the bond issue.
So having those developer taxpayer payments protects against a lower than anticipated new AV.
Correct. So it protects from those developers coming in to appeal their tax payments because there's a minimum MTP in place.
Or even if the county assessor doesn't cooperate and gives a lower than anticipated AV.
Yep.
Because obviously that's part of the projection, right? When these folks come in, is you anticipate what this new development is going to generate.
Exactly.
But you're still dependent upon the county assessor to give you that value.
Right. Yes, exactly. And often when you have developers coming in to locate, we highly suggest that we have a meeting with the county assessor, us, somebody from your board, and the developer to talk through with the assessor what the project's going to be, especially if it's a project that there's nothing like it in your particular town. If it's in the county, then maybe they can get a little bit more comfortable, but to try to get them as close as possible to what our projections would be. But two, it's a discussion with the developer saying, hey, we're willing to incentivize you and give you 100% of your TIF or 50% of your TIF back to you. You need to guarantee to us that you're going to pay that taxes at this projected level. And normally the developers, I would say, want it on their end because it helps them kind of meet that financial gap that the bank on the construction side of things wants to see. Because so on any developer project, you have the construction loan that the developer's getting that they are financing on their own to actually finance a project. And then you have the public side of things where basically they're saying, all right, on the construction loan side of things, this project will not fund itself. And there's a $2 million gap. And so, hey, town, we would like you to TIF this area to help us fill this $2 million gap. Can you run a projection for us? And that's where we come in this side of things with these EDC bonds, project out the TIF generated from their project, say this is how much it will generate in a bond issue. You as a redevelopment commission can say we're only willing to give you 50% of that TIF back or 100%, whatever it may be over a certain period of time to help fill that financial gap to get the project to work. These are just some example projects. The town of Brownsburg, I don't know if anyone's driven through it recently, but they are in the midst of transforming their Main Street by Town Hall into the bottom picture, which is mixed use retail office on the bottom, some shared co-working space with apartments up above. And then there's a parking garage right in the middle. And they're actually on their phase 2 now, where the same developers come back saying, hey, we would like to do another project. And so the top picture, is what the town looked like before, like 900 square foot box homes, basically. The church on the left-hand side of the street that they dozed, the town owned that property already. And so they knew they had the land underneath their belt that they could provide as an incentive. But because it went from not very appealing to any developers to what the town wanted, the town had to put more on the hook. So on slide 34 is just one example of what we call a capital stack, meaning there are just several different pieces of the financing puzzle to get some projects off the ground in a community where they had nothing really enticing for developers to even want to come look at their town. They just had to be more willing to put more on the line. So they issued a couple different bonds, a bond issue for the parking garage because the town was requiring that 80 or 90% of the garage be a public garage that folks could use and come and park at. So they issued on the right-hand side bonds payable from the Arbuckle TIF, which is the project TIF. They did minimum taxpayer payments to guarantee that TIF. And then they used their existing TIF area, which is their North Beltway TIF. And then they also, as a part of the bonds, had any available revenues of the commission could be pledged and pay for the bonds, and a property tax backup. So it's not unusual. Again, kind of when you first start major kind of downtown projects, especially, to have to layer on these various revenue streams to get a project up off the ground. So that the bond issue payable from all those sources funded the parking garage for $5.8 million plus, and then the developer had a financing gap of $6.9 million. So the bond issue paid for that. The land the town gave to the developer, and so when that happens, there is a value that goes along with the land, and so that's a part of this incentive package, and it most definitely needs to be a line item out. The town waived all of the connection fees, impact fees. So that had a value of $342,000. And then the town also used some of their edit funds into the mix. So this project, the town, again, had to put a lot into to get up off the ground. But if it's something that you're willing to do, other town, like Fishers did that to get their whole downtown area started. It just sometimes takes that. I just wanted to give you, that's one real life example. And then I don't know if you've been to Carmel, to their Midtown area where the Sun King is at. So this is what Midtown looked like before. And the Monon Trail is there on the right-hand side, is still there. And that 911 tower has been a big discussion topic recently. If you've followed it in the newspaper, they are wanting to put up some lights on it of like different art for people to be more of an icon, like the Eiffel Tower, to entice people to take pictures by it and social media it. Anyways, so this is what Midtown looked like before, and then this is what it looks like now. So they had Allied Solutions as the main office building in on the backhand side of this picture. They were interested and came to the city, and they wanted a building in downtown, and the city was willing to incentivize them by funding the parking garage in this particular case. But by funding a very large parking garage, it got them pretty much all of this development. So that sits now on the Monon. So in this particular case, they did taxable lease bonds that in 10.8 million, 89 million payable from TIF from the project. The fourth bullet point, so it was paid from the project TIF, or the developer TIF. They have what is called a PIAT, payment in addition to taxes, meaning if the TIF came in lower, that they were willing to pay more and was originally projected. They also did a developer guarantee on the project, which makes it a taxable bond issue. And then they did a property tax backup on it. So though Carmel is Carmel and well built out already, this project was like kind of in the middle space between where their town hall, their city hall is, and their main street. And they, again, it took a little bit for them to get this particular area of the city up and going. So they had to put a little bit more into it than they might now into a project. So a lot of these communities start out by giving more incentives, and then they slowly like dwindle that incentive down for anyone that comes and asks, once you kind of get to that point. So, and then the goal would be to be able to do what we call TIF splits to the developers, where you don't have to give them 100% of their TIF, that you could give them a portion, 90 or 80% of their TIF instead of 100%. But again, it just depends on what you want to do, how big you want to go, what you want to be, to get all these things off the ground. And then there's a couple slides here at the end about tax abatement. So I just wanted to provide you some guidance, or at least one slide on tax abatement. But it sounds like you guys are kind of aware of what that is, what you can do. And you can do TIF and tax abatement together, which are the two last slides. So just kind of a visual of what that looks like. I know a lot of information once again.
It's just a little bit to digest.
But again, I just can't stress enough as far as kind of thinking through the town, where you want to focus your development, who you want to be. Like that orderly growth is huge. And I would say that past redevelopment commissions have always had really good intentions, but have never formally ever put anything to paper as far as kind of focusing what you want to use your existing TIF on, and keeping in mind maybe in your downtown or 37, wherever it may be, what type of developments you would like to try to entice to come to those areas. And working with Johnson County Aspire to make sure that they know what type of developments you want to locate in the town, because they can be of assistance going out to developers and bringing them in, or companies and bringing them in. But I would say too, with having Andrew on the RDC, he has connections to the developer world. So that would be huge. Even if he could just chatter about what you guys want to become out in the developer world. You know, we talk with developers all of the time too, on behalf of cities and towns. And so, you know, as soon as you guys decide what you want to be and where you want it to be, I mean, it's just, you know, kind of a quick conversation. Hey, Margarettville is looking to have this in their downtown if you're interested, kind of thing, you know, to make them aware of what you want.
Anybody have any other questions for Heidi? Very informative. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And today we appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Protocol question. If we have questions for Heidi offline, do we work through your office, or do we work directly with?
Yeah, we can, Heidi, I'll let you answer how you would, if you're comfortable with them, just sending you.
Yeah, I would say just CC Julie, just so she
And
knows.
CC
I am
me.
totally fine with you guys reaching out directly.
The next item, if you have another 5 minutes.
I do, yeah, I
Okay.
my meeting. I have a meeting.
Oh, okay.
So,
Wasn't
I
here.
was gonna have to go south after this, so I'm good. We have plenty of
Don't-
time.
Thought Heidi was on a tight window here. But next, wanted to have a kind of a follow-up question on the TIF district. Listed it as expansion, but really we need to readjust those boundaries, as we just heard from Heidi. Some underperforming areas, and we are expecting some new projects to be coming in. So adjusting those boundaries so that we're having those perform better. And would the commission like to officially engage Heidi to start that process? It would be something we would need to complete by the end of the year, if it's something we want to be effective for that January 1 tax date. So wanted to kind of have that discussion while Heidi was here, so that we could, you know, discuss the pros and cons of going through that now. If we would recommend holding off on that. I know Heidi and I had a
That's up with kind of where you guys were suggesting that
Yeah.
it's happened. I don't know if that's changed at all, but
So we've kind of, in talking with council, there are kind of 5 priority areas of growth we see And those will have some different flavors to them as that growth happens. I think we've all talked about downtown, the industrial park area, 135 and 144, that intersection there, that gateway, the I-69 corridor, and the 135 corridor. Those are really the primary opportunities for commercial industrial growth in the community. And they will be a little different in those different areas. So, and I think the maps that you received reflect those areas as being those priority areas. So how do we capture that best for this board and for the town from a revenue and a growth perspective? I don't know.
Yeah, so I would say, as we talked about a couple of meetings ago, knowing the timing in which you think some development will happen in those areas needs to be thought through as far as when you want to establish TIF areas, because if you establish TIF areas prematurely, then, and AVs naturally depreciate in value, then you can have this negative incremental AV happen, which is what happened in the 37 area. We were all kind of anxious to get something out there so that it was the towns, and yeah, it's serving no purpose at this point to anybody. And so it seems that the 37 area would definitely be one that we would want to reestablish the base and get that back to zero, for sure.
So how often can we, you just have to do that
Anytime you want.
before, okay. So it's a no-brainer then,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
So the change will always, the main change is that the base value gets set to the prior January 1. And that you typically want to set up amend TIF areas before any shovels are in the ground. So I mean, the timing can be pretty tight as far as when you actually create the area. Obviously, areas that are already within the town boundaries are safe for you, you know, so you can time the creation of those areas right up until shovels are in the ground so that you are capturing as much assessed value as possible. I would say even if there are areas like along 135, for example, that you want to pick up and they are ag right now as far as zoning, as soon as they flip and are rezoned to commercial or whatever it may be, it's going to go up. So you would want to set up the TIF area before the zoning would change. And so again, just kind of knowing that the timing potential of that area, even if it needs to be sections down 135, you can do pieces, whatever, you know. So I think kind of knowing the timing of each one of these would be good. And again, kind of where you guys are focusing your growth. The TIF area life, again, does not start until bonds are issued, but one of the legal requirements in the declaratory resolution, which is one of the legal documents, is that new taxes will be generated. And so they don't want people to set up TIF areas just to set them up and hope something happens. So you need to be a little bit strategic about it. And in the example where a developer comes and locates on a property, for example, and I don't know if anything's happening over there, I'm just kind of pointing over there. You can set up the TIF area in the process of issuing bonds. So it's the timing of that particular example. You don't have to have it set up right now to get developers to look at it. Because you can, if they know you have TIF areas and you are willing to set up a TIF area, they're comfortable with that.
We've got a huge chunk of the 135 TIF that's school owned. So we may want to look at that in terms of pulling that back out.
Right, that hurt or help you at this point, so.
Right.
If you are doing several amendments and want to take it out, you are more than welcome to. I know that there was a little area right north of Center Grove that is residential currently in nature that you guys were looking at. So my only thought would be the allocation area has to be contiguous with the rest of the allocation area, except you can get away with it like with right of ways. And so if you wanted to pick up that area, you just would want to make sure that whatever along Whiteland Road that connects into the original Whiteland Road area is still there.
Oh, gotcha. Looking at that, the corner of Saddle Club and Whiteland, is that what?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Then we've got the Dressler building that's not in the 144, 135 TIF, right?
Correct.
So we might want to consider sliding that further west.
What was that building you said?
It's the Dressler building, it's the kind of the industrial building on the, as you come into town from 135 on the north side of 144.
Okay.
That we just approved a tax abatement for a company that have been there. They haven't done it yet, but that's,
The address is 390 East Old Plank Road.
So what's the best way to go about this then, if we do wanna, I don't know what you guys think, I think rebasing the negative areas is something to do now, in my opinion, and then pulling the trigger on maybe, because I think we talked last time about that 135 corridor, expanding that. And then to your point, Eric, do we want to slide over that 144 over to include for the west?
I think we just need a motion to engage Heidi to start that process, correct?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely a team effort for you all to determine what you want to add and what you want to amend. My role in the process is just to guide you and provide you guidance and be strategic. She will do all the legal documents for you. And then I would do the tax impact statement that's required towards the end of the amendment process. So it's definitely a team effort. She could put together a procedural timetable to show you the 4 meetings that would be required. And then you would just need to decide, which month you want to start the process. But obviously you need to decide what amendments you want to make before starting that process. So I would say a couple of other thoughts. If you want to expand any of your EDA boundaries, you could also do that in this point in time. So if you wanted to expand your EDA boundaries into your downtown so you could spend monies from the other TIF areas in your downtown, that might be a smart move right now until there are parcels within your downtown that you would want to actually capture as an allocation area. But right now, maybe not create any allocation areas in your downtown. If that, again, is where you are trying to focus some of your energy. Again, right now, all of your areas are connected by a consolidated EDA. So if you want to use any of your Whiteland Road TIF funds out at 37 for any reason, you can do that. If you need to use them down at the industrial park, you can do that.
How far north does the connectivity go on 135? Does it go all the way up to Stones Crossing? You can capture the old Marsh building and that area up there. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that 135 corridor already goes up there, or is that right away captured if we go up there and capture?
like the actual district stops at Smoky Road Road, right? Across from,
Yes.
am I right? Across from the road, wasn't it that way? Something's gonna happen up there further north eventually. I don't think it's gonna be worth any less than it is now. So those are just the different areas. Eric was just talking about, hey, and if we have a number of different areas, we can do them all, we can do it all at the same time.
That's what I would recommend. So up to Stone's Crossing, is that an expansion of your EDA boundaries at this point? Is there anything to actually capture, any new development that's happening yet?
There's development that has happened already. The Noble Runs came in and I mean, there's existing things there,
Okay,
but we're not gonna capture that.
right, you won't.
It's already said, so.
Mr. President, there is a daycare that is going in at 135 and Whiteland Road. I don't know that's in the TIF district, and also Sundown Gardens. I'm not sure if was also approved, and they have not.
So, yeah, Sundown would not be in
Part of the
it.
135 corridor.
Yeah, that's what we're
Yeah,
talking
so I
about.
don't know if, I don't have the map in front of me, but those are the two that I know that we probably need, that have
I
not.
think we're capturing the daycare.
Are we capturing? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to double check and make sure that.
If it's going in that area where El Beso is,
No, it's
No.
going over on the other side behind CDS
oh,
and Hartshire area.
Those outlets of.
it looks like we've got,
Okay.
looks like we've
So I
got
just
that.
wanted to make sure, because those are the ones that I do know that have come before plan.
In that empty office building? Right
No,
behind
it's actually
CVS?
It's new construction.
Oh, new
It's new construction.
Gotcha.
It's actually part of that South Grove, I think it's called South Grove Common, just north of the CVS.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Planning Commission space would approve that.
And then south on 135 is the
But that's right.
Sundown Gardens, that's.
Right, right, okay, right.
Do you want to pick up those two things in allocation area?
I believe so.
Pull up the map. I don't have a copy of the map. Can we pull that?
I have it on, I don't know if I can plug my computer in or not.
You can.
I can.
Is it right here?
No, I got another one of them.
Yes. Open.
Are we wanting to expand the EDA into the downtown area? Is that
I
what?
think so. We need to have that discussion, but yeah.
So then it's just figuring out what boundaries, where exactly do you want those lines to be?
And it has to go along parcel lines, right?
Mm-hmm. And even if you
Business
can, you know, draw kind of generic lines and we can work through on GIS to see what parcels would actually be picked up.
Well, I know like Johnson's Barbecue Shack just announced they were gonna do a $5 million expansion
Oh.
renovation. So, I mean, that's,
I mean, this whole area right here needs to be.
probably needs to be tipped.
I mean, wherever that's drawn up. And then the 135 corridor from 2 Cent Road north. I mean,
Is the-
that already is basically part of the industrial. But from, 144 all the way up to Whiteland Road.
Yeah.
I'm just as an individual member, I'm very pro anything downtown.
Yeah.
Old Town, that's where I think we should focus personally. As far as giving you my thoughts. More than any other area, in my opinion.
And there are
Five
definitely
areas.
developers that are looking solely at doing that type of development around the state.
Is that Dressler there, or is that the darker spot? It's one of them, it's right there.
Yeah, you're right.
So that was the area, Heidi, that we were talking about, that we need to expand this to. Yeah, there it is.
And why don't we want to do the entire railroad corridor and the entire whole area downtown?
So you don't necessarily want to make it in your allocation area, because allocation area is where you capture incremental assessed value. So if you have older buildings, they're going to go down in value. So you want to create the TIF area basically as soon as a renovation or a new development is going to happen.
So it's practically instant that we can do that. I guess we'll know far enough out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, you just need to have your eye and ear on hearing when things are actually going to happen, like the Johnson Barbecue example.
Well, I'm hearing that Barber's, one of their buildings is possibly going to be leased on the north side of 144 across from where the green is. And right now that's nothing, but as soon as the lease is signed and if that happens, then the value is going to go up. So
Is it vacant currently?
hearing it and hearing plans about it, I mean, how do you coordinate that? Who coordinates that? I mean,
I would hate for you to make your whole downtown area an allocation area. Just because of what I've seen in other downtown areas. So I would say that if you know something, there's a good potential for the hamburger to become something, we can add an allocation area down here. Is the Johnson Barbecue right down here?
It's right here on the other side of the.
So if you know that's gonna happen,
One parcel.
right.
I mean, we can kick out certain parcels in your downtown that you know have a higher chance of developing. And typically we can get, legal counsel could get comfortable with connecting them like through road right of way, kind of like how some of your areas are connected now. So it might look a little bit funny on a map if you pick up, certain parcels, but you can do that if legal counsel is comfortable.
Oh, Heidi, why not do a larger amendment of the EDAs now?
Which I think you can
Is that
do.
what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely do a larger
Pull
EDA.
downtown
Yeah.
And expand the EDA of 135, but hold off on turning specific parcels into allocation.
Unless you know Johnson Barbecue is gonna do a $5 million expansion.
They said they did, but the article was unclear about whether they were gonna do it on their existing
Oh, okay.
parcel or somewhere else. They were looking within the town, I think.
Heidi, it's the same process, the 4-meeting process, correct?
Yes.
So from the time that they would submit a building permit to the department would be plenty of time for notification.
I mean, normally you get the 4-step meeting process done in 2 months. Okay. It just depends on how often your planning commission meets.
They meet monthly, so I'm just asking that because,
Yeah.
A $5 million expansion's gonna take them more than 2 months to do. So
For sure.
whatever, what notification process would be best, because we see all the permits that are coming in. We see all the rezoning requests that are coming in.
So if you're willing to just keep an eye and think, communicate to the RDC about, it just depends on who it is that wants to do that.
we can basically auto-generate reports that can go through to the RDC on what's coming through.
That'd be helpful
Yeah, absolutely.
to see.
We're already sending out monthly reports of what comes into what gets approved by the planning department from a permit perspective.
Sundown Gardens, that's what we're calling it.
Sundown Gardens,
That would be one of the ones probably,
yeah, it's gone through rezoning.
that's probably the one that is coming, correct? It currently,
Mhm.
right now, sits completely out of,
Completely out of any,
that would be.
So I guess that circles back to your suggestion, we engage Heidi for this process to expand the EDAs and look at expanding certain portions of the TIF district. We need to do that as a separate motion, or is she already engaged with us?
I need to get a new TIF agreement. We've been running on a pretty old TIF agreement, which the rates haven't changed, the rate windows have not changed. But I can get you a new agreement that has the amendment section in it so that we're covered for any kind of future amendments in the next 3 years.
You need to,
If you're comfortable with that, you can submit it, and if you're comfortable with Heidi submitting that and starting that process, we'll have you officially sign that.
we need to just do that by consensus today and then officially adopt
I
it.
would prefer a motion.
Okay, fantastic. We need a motion to engage Heidi to provide a new services agreement to cover the expansion of the EDAs and the TIFs.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Beadle, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Freecore. All those, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Right. Well, how'd you go?
And just so you know, I do have a team of folks a little bit younger than me that work on town stuff.
And you look awfully young to me. But
Believe it or
that's my-
not, I'm one of
that's
the
my
ones.
perspective.
Yeah, so Greg Balsano, you will see his name. He's worked for the town with me for a while, so, and we'll probably have even somebody younger than him to try to keep costs as low as possible. So that's, just so you know, our structure as far as how we work.
So would it be beneficial then, in our next meeting, to sit down and actually, map out these parcels in terms of what we want to do specifically in terms of EDAs, as well as kind of a running list of allocations based on what we think timing's going to be. So if we know sundown's first, then maybe that's priority one, and then we can just have a running list to keep an eye on based on what we know today, and then if we're continuing to get these reports, we can add them in and take them off. I'm trying to think how do we make this a little bit more fluid as things get added on, taken off.
We can certainly add that to the agenda next time.
Are you guys in agreement? I'm just trying to think of, that way we know exactly where we're putting these things, maintaining allocation areas.
I think that's a good idea, because I know there were suggested amendments out at 37 as far as picking up more parcels. I'm not sure if it's EDA or allocation area. At this point, we just need to reset. Obviously, step one would be to reset that, but I wasn't sure. And like
Yeah.
north of that, it's like down 135 or down 144 if we need to.
Yeah, and I think that is important for your education for us on timing and how critical that is, and the fact that we can amend this as many times as we need to, based on the timing of the projects, so that we look at that, because I believe the maps you received were based on here's where we want those to grow
Right.
without that time element included.
Right.
So that'll be part of the discussion with you folks is what do we think's going to happen first?
Because I'm assuming we need to go in to whoever made the point and individually select the parcels we're pulling in, right?
Yeah.
If it's specific ones, or as Heidi suggested, draw a vague line
Area.
and then we can narrow that down to.
Right.
Yeah, like in GIS, for example, in Beacon,
Right.
you go in, there's a drawing tool that you can
Right.
even utilize just to draw some lines as far as where you were thinking.
Can you pull the 69, zoom in on the 69 area?
And we're definitely gonna check on what we need to find out if the county's issuing debt
Yes.
in that area. So there was some discussion going down 144 where there's like a chunk out of the TIF area at some point. On the right-hand side, on the east side, northeast side. Where does the county trying to go? Because you're going to boundaries.
Just trying to match up.
Yeah. Okay. So they're getting all of this. Yeah. Where does the plan, is there a plan, what other intersections going in besides 144?
Smith Valley. Smith Valley is county line.
Okay, so you guys don't have an interest to go that far north anyways, right?
We have north.
Not immediately.
How much area of the town limit is north of the existing TIF?
He goes to Travis, just Travis Road, cuts over.
Mark's correct, yeah.
I think, is that
You're
correct?
correct.
That's Travis right there.
And then, so that's wedge.
We don't have anything north of there.
Correct. The town does not go north of Travis on
It goes up to.
47, does it? Our utilities do.
It goes up to Stone's Crossing.
That's not oh, yeah, you're right. It is.
Town boundaries.
Oh, so we get all this.
Correct, okay.
It's still,
Because Drag, I'm sorry, Travis is there. Yeah, it's there, so. Yeah, I was wrong. Can you
pull up
push that down, yeah, a little bit.
I'm sorry, where, I'm sorry?
You just drag it down.
Drag it
just a
to
little bit.
Stone's Crossing.
There you go.
Yeah.
oh, here's the one right there. Yeah, it's all.
That one. Right. With one over.
It would be on the south side all the way to the county line.
The valley. I go directly greatly. How are they overpaying on food?
Yeah, we got this, that chunk right there as well.
I think that'd be an area right to expand, but again, you want to expand it at the right time.
And it's in the town's boundaries, so you are safe as far as the county coming in to potentially take it from you. It would just be above Stone's Crossing if there was anything there that we thought,
Can you go up a little bit more, please? To see what,
but I don't know if it's in our interest.
yeah, so there's no.
Smith
Smith Valley.
County line.
Yes, a lot of this would be tougher to develop, just because there's no direct access, right?
Aren't they putting in an access road though?
There'll be a access road on east and west.
On both.
On both.
I knew they were doing one on the west side from Smith Valley down to 144, I think, to connect all that through.
The one on the eastern side doesn't go up as far. The Wakefield subdivision is where it stops.
But a lot of this is floodplain over here as well, so.
Correct.
There's a pretty small sliver on the west side that's gonna be developed with all this. Is
Floodplain.
I don't know, anybody know how that affects that chunk? I'm not really familiar with that piece. Is that floodplain as well? This bit right here.
I believe that maybe, is that the piece owned by the Morgan County Redevelopment?
I think so.
I believe so.
So you probably just got this.
I believe you're correct.
Morgan County Redevelopment, yeah, that's good on this.
Say that again, what was your question? Because I just pulled up the flood zone.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, our town limit goes all the way to the county line here, but my guess is most of this is not developable.
Not according to Beacon.
Yeah, the floodplain looks like it's north of it.
Yeah, it's north. So,
Well, there you go.
so then this would be.
So most of this chunk is.
Morgan County.
According
That's Morgan
not
County.
according to Beacon.
There's like two parcels right on that corner.
Yeah,
that
very
right
top.
with Morgan.
So those are areas we'll probably want to consider potentially expanding, definitely expanding the EDA, right? If it's not.
Definitely that area. West side at 69 as you go. You can really see now after.
Yeah.
The west side.
I will say when you, please confirm this, when you amend an existing area, if it's EDA or allocation area, you have to notify the property owners that they're being added to a TIF area, or is that only?
I think it's basically the exact same process as if you're creating, or at least that's recommended.
Okay, but I know when you create a TIF area, you don't have to notify the owners of the property. Unless you are planning to acquire them, then I think they get a notice. But I know when you amend, I think it's amended allocation area, that you have to notify them that they're gonna be put in to an allocation area. But I think if you amend EDA,
Just the ED.
that I don't think you have to actually send a notice to those taxpayers. But if, we'll want to make sure that you guys understand that, just in case for any reason there would be any concern with any of those landowners.
The landowner is another redevelopment commission. I mean, Morgan County, did you know that? Those parcels in the far northwest corner are owned by the Morgan County Redevelopment Commission.
Yes.
According to GIS, it's about 35 acres.
Yes, correct.
Was that all part
But
of
they
the
cannot make-
sanitary?
They cannot make it a TIF area
Correct.
themselves because it's within
our
the town and you have an RDC. So you could put it in your allocation area or your EDA, to capture whatever it is they might be trying to bring there. I don't know if they have plans or not, but.
So there are RDT owns around in Johnson County.
Correct.
In our town. So it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Stuff there.
Wow. It's about 35 acres.
It's like, unless there's some other
That's
small.
aggressive.
So it's a nonprofit entity, so it's zero value right now until it becomes something. So you could add it to an allocation area really whenever you would want to, but it would need to be contiguous with the existing allocation area. Unless you set up a truly
Yeah,
separate
there's
one.
another little parcel here that they have that takes them access all the way from 37 back there. That one strip.
The 40 acres.
Yeah, there's more than just 35, yeah, there's.
Yeah, if you wanted like the whole west side up to Stone's Crossing, that whole area in your EDA, you can put it in your EDA. That's up to you all. The only thing that shows up on GIS are your allocation areas, or the areas that you're capturing the increment from, so it wouldn't show up on the GIS, but.
Didn't see, you said the parts that have to be contiguous are your allocation areas.
Correct.
Okay.
The only way you can get around, well, it looking contiguous would be if you would follow a right of way along the road to connect a separate area.
So you can do an EDA, but when we're talking about pulling out pieces and parts, that's where you're saying you have to have it has to be contiguous once you, so if we do Johnson's barbecue, that's gotta connect to.
Well, so if you wanted to do anything in your downtown,
Mhm.
I would create it as a new and separate allocation area.
Okay.
But you could connect like Umbarger to Johnson Barbecue to if there was another place,
Mhm.
if there was a right of way in between them. If not, then the downtown allocation area parcels would need to be contiguous.
We use the railroad and
We'd use the railroad.
Do we need to make a motion to adjust 3769,
Well, I think that's what we were,
engaging her?
we're gonna get that process going, and then we need to meet and specify the parcels, that we wanna do, and then we give Heidi the green light to start that process.
And if you come up with the maps, just give them to us and the process is, the most work and the timing, like, the most time-consuming part of this process is the work that you all have to do with determining what you want to add in, what amendments you want to make. And that's, again, where I can provide you guidance and ask you questions to see if it seems to be the right timing to do that. But I've made a list of just the discussion of things it seems that might be the immediate or like the phase one of amendments that you might want to do. Obviously, there are costs that are involved with going through that 4-step meeting process. So yes, you can do it anytime. The more we can do within one amendment process, the better. And it will obviously save you guys some money. But our fees can be paid through TIF funds that you have.
So Heidi, Noble Romans went in 2020, is that right? Is that right, Mark? 2020 is when that was built, the Noble Romans, and then they went in 2021?
Because it wasn't gonna be the normal.
Right, it was gonna be the burger place. So that area has increased in value. That has the assessed value has gone up on that. So are we capturing that?
No.
We are not.
That's along 135.
That's 135, right? I guess north of the Marsh building.
Yeah, that TIF stops at Smoky Row.
Okay,
It doesn't go up.
Actually, the southwest corner of Smoky Row Road and 135 sits outside of.
That vacant,
And
that whole vacant.
corner, which is gonna be something kind of.
mm-hmm.
So the new construction that's happening at Aspen Trace, even something like that
I
would be
was gonna
captured. That's all been approved by the planning commission. They haven't been moving any dirt, but I still say that corridor up the marsh up to that corner.
I think so too. I think so too.
But I think having, Heidi, to your point, a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, kind of game plan would be beneficial.
And just so you guys can kind of keep your eye on it too.
Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, they took everything down on both sides, but that's okay. I mean, well, doesn't matter, because we're outside. That's our boundary, that purple one.
Mhm.
So they've got everything north.
Okay.
so yeah, we need to do that.
Okay, any other questions for Julie or Heidi on that expansion of the TIF district item? All right, then let's move on to item C, discussion regarding priority areas of growth.
I briefly mentioned them on the last item. Specifically looking at downtown, the industrial park area, 135 and 144 gateway area, the I-69 corridor, and the 135 corridor. Kind of thinking about what our strategies are going to be for those different areas and how this board and the council will be working together to implement those strategies. This TIF discussion has been a great step in that. So just want to make sure that we continue that conversation and we continue talking about those areas and potential projects. You'll hear us talk about that at every meeting in some form or fashion.
All right.
And then kind of an update on projects that we have in process or ready for construction right now. Baldwin Street is scheduled to start construction later this week. You will see the area north of Harriman close later for sidewalk. We'll start with the sidewalks. It'll be total reconstruction of the street and sidewalks from Old Plank Road to Old South Street and wrapping around on South Street. So that'll be happening for the next couple of months. We'll do our best, communicate, and get the crews in and out as quickly as possible. Second, not sure if you folks saw the announcement, but we received funding from DNR for a trail project. We're working on a trail to connect from the Whiteland Road Trail to Kephart Park and then into the Switzer Park where the previous trail ended. So that's slated for construction next year.
Will that come down Saddle Club then?
Come down Saddle Club.
On the east side or west side?
Likely the east side. Still in design. And then we have been working with Crossroads. They provided us with a conceptual roundabout design for the 144 and Saddle Club intersection. And that now we're going to be able to move forward with the entrance design for Kephart Park. So that way we can coordinate those. And Kephart Park Phase 1 will be moving that design forward. Phase 1 is the entrances and perimeter trail and getting some parking on the site so that people can utilize the site. And then those trails will connect to that new trail project as well as the Morningside trails. So starting to expand and make those connections.
Can you remind me where that park is going?
It's at the corner of 144 and Saddle Club Road. East.
Yeah, east, yeah.
Thanks, Bethany.
When you said the roundabout at Saddle Club and 144, what's the timing on that?
I don't have a construction time on that. It is one of our priority projects with
Is that being driven? If
it's
that's
being driven by the impact fee funding.
Okay, what about Morgantown Road and 144?
Same thing.
How do you prioritize Saddle Club versus the Morgantown Road? Who prioritizes that?
The town and the county, as we started that project, identified 3 priority projects. The Morgantown Road was our number 1 priority project. And so as funds come in, we will start with design and move forward on those as we can. Next,
Is that it? Any other?
those are all the updates I have.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Julie. Moving on to administrative items, we have some open door law training. Did that just go out the door?
It did. Just change the order real quick until she comes back.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump down to budget review and approval of claims then.
There was just one claim that had been submitted.
Okay. That was the attorney's fee claim. Do we need to have a motion on that or? Okay. There's been a claim for an attorney fee payment from Debbie Fredbeck and Yount. We have a motion to approve that claim.
Make a motion to approve the claim.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Right. Did we have any specific budget review to do, or that was on the agenda? It was,
You gotta be
doesn't look like anything had changed. So. All right. Then back up to open door law training.
Do you want me to take the lead?
Yes, it's gonna let you take the lead.
This was, came up a little after last month's meetings, and we have some new folks. I go over open door basics. It's a quick review board. So basically the default is any gathering of the members, meaning 3 or more. The default is that any gathering counts as a meeting, and all meetings need to be noticed, both posted here at Town Hall and given to the Daily Journal newspaper. Special meetings can be called, but again, they need to be noticed. There are a couple different types of things that can happen within public meetings, one of which is a public hearing. You would only see that if we were doing something like creating a new TIF district. It's much more common to have public hearings at the BZA and Planning Commission.
We did that levy of a special tax assessment that I assume would be a public hearing as well.
Yeah, like well, I was thinking the tax abatement, the town council is the one that holds the public hearing for that. Yeah, it's per statute based on what action is being taken. Public forums, we don't do very often, but that would be kind of like a town hall meeting situation. We could utilize that if you're interested, but we haven't traditionally utilized public forums. Same with work sessions, when the public has to be allowed to attend, so I would just as soon do the same type of discussions or work during a regular meeting. Executive sessions, this is a big one. They can only be held to discuss specific topics which are laid out in the statute. In your case, the real property transaction is going to be the most common one. It's very important that during executive sessions, no votes are taken. So the purpose is to have some privacy to discuss strategy, priorities, ask questions, and you can discuss it, but you can't come to a consensus and you cannot come to a final action, which means no final vote. Any questions on that? This is just a reiteration that basically any gathering where you're going to discuss RDC business should be done at a public meeting. Official action has a much broader definition than final action. Official action is as broad as even to include receiving information. So I take it very broadly, and if three of you are together, you should not be discussing RDC business. Here's a little more detail on meetings, and there are specific exclusions. So it's okay to get together or run into each other at Taxman. There's some carve outs for if you're traveling to a conference or something. The gathering to discuss an industrial or commercial prospect, I would be very careful with that simply because it kind of starts to overlap with the definition of official action. So if you want to have, we talked about 2 people getting together with council members, that would generally be my recommendation is if you want to send out kind of a committee, limit it to 2 people.
What's a conference? We can do it.
You can.
All right.
This is the broad definition of official action versus final action. Again, it's just safer to have an official meeting and give notice to the public. Serial meetings, useful. This is now specifically codified, and it's trying to avoid basically a skirting of the open door law. So you cannot get together with 2 or 3 of you and talk about what you want to do on a certain decision, and then go to the next 2 people and get together with them about what you want to do. It's basically, official decisions should be made and discussed at an actual meeting. This would include, 2 of you getting together and phoning in or Skyping in a third, so you can't get away with it based on a physical presence technicality. They've got that covered. Public notice, staff and I always take care of. The agenda needs to be posted. If we have an executive session, notice of that must be posted. If we have a special meeting, we give notice for that. Typically for boards who meet monthly, we do a one big notice to the journal at the beginning of the year. We'll do that moving forward for you, but if there's ever a special meeting, we give notice to the daily journal. Meeting minutes, again, staff and I take care of this. You don't really have to worry about that. Penalties though, so we have a public access counselor whose job it is to oversee and give opinions on the open door law, also the access to public records law. But there are consequences not only for the town, but if a person were to believe that a violation has occurred, so maybe they see 3 of you gathered together at somebody's house and they say, well, that's odd. They don't usually socialize. I wonder if they were making a decision for next week's meeting. Well, that person can file a lawsuit, and if they go through and jump through the right hoops, they can not only get a civil penalty against the town, but against you individually. Thankfully, we've never had to, or at least in my memory, we haven't had to go through that. But that's just something that you should be aware of. I would be happy to take any questions or go back through any of those slides.
I guess my only question is, communication outside of the meetings, like emails and things of that nature, how do we go about that?
So if you're talking about like availability for an executive session, that's fine. If you want to talk about getting together, if you decided that, 2 people are gonna tackle this project and 2 people are gonna tackle another, emails between you and your partner on that are fine. What we want to avoid is substantive discussions or decisions being made outside of meetings.
Can I ask one question? So if they have a developer that comes and they want to just talk in generalities about the project, but don't really want anyone to know outside in the public yet, that can happen in the executive session, just so they don't, can they receive information in executive session? They just can't make any consensus, they
If
can't
it
make
had
any
to-
votes?
If we could tie it to an acquisition of real estate, then it could definitely be an executive session.
That's what I thought. I've seen that happen a lot, just so you all know if you can't want to keep it hush hush, or if the developer wants to kind of keep it quiet, then you can have executive session.
I just remember like lawsuit land and HR, basically, it's like basically HR, even if it's people outside of the collective bargaining, still. I like it to be an executive session on school.
Also, that meeting could take place with just 2 of us.
Correct.
Then we're not
Correct.
at quorum level.
Right.
Any other questions?
So I guess let me add one more thing. In addition to not wanting to have 3 of you together actually discussing RDC business, I, to protect you, don't even want you to have the appearance of violating. So that's why, if you're here and 1 or 2 of you have an extra question for Heidi and you're milling around, that's fine, but it is best to kind of disperse when the meeting is concluded.
Great. Thanks for that. That was helpful.
So basically, 3 or more is the cutoff, where you've basically gotten to notice it, minutes, everything. Less than that, you're pretty much free to do kind of whatever you want in terms of discussion or.
Yeah, as long as you're not doing the serial meeting,
Right.
jumping back and forth.
Right. Or making a decision.
Correct.
Right.
Great. Our next meeting will be Thursday, August 12th. Same time, same place, 7:30. And I will now close the public meeting.